Welcome to Philadelphia Forum, WNWR's public affairs program. Each week, we take a look at issues, events, personalities, and topics that affect and shape our lives here in the Delaware Valley. Thought-provoking, entertaining, and informative, Philadelphia Forum is here to help find out who and what makes the Philadelphia metropolis the vibrant, diverse area it is. This is Philadelphia Forum.
Hi, this is Bob Gordon on Philadelphia Forum at WNWR Radio. We're here talking about the 1960 Philadelphia Eagles and football. Pleased to have two guests with me today. I've got Tommy McDonald, one of the all-time great Philadelphia Eagle receivers. Tommy, welcome.
Thank you.
And I have Pete Retzlaff, number 44, one of the all-time great Eagle receivers.
Thanks, Bob. Nice to be with you.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Just want to pick up a little discussion that we had on the previous segment about the 1960 Philadelphia Eagles that won a championship here 41 years ago, and that was the last championship that Philadelphia has had the pleasure of celebrating.
And it was the most money Pete and I had ever seen in our life, $5,000 and some dollars. That's great, because now they get, what, $80,000?
For the new listeners, they're talking about the championship share was $5,200 that year.
That's right.
Yeah.
For winning the championship, winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that year, Bobby Walston was elected to go to the Pro Bowl, and he didn't take his wife, Nell, with him, and she wanted to go. So when Bobby got home, Nell had a surprise for him. He had a fur coat that cost $5,300. And she said, see, it would have been better off to take me to this Pro Bowl.
Yeah, she did a little shopping.
And I can tell you that now.
Is that some advice to the new guys?
Bobby's passed away, as you know, and I can tell you that now. So
it's some advice to the new guys. Bring your wives.
Take your wives to all the All-Star games.
You can get a lot for $150,000, can't you? I guess.
That's right.
Super Bowl share. Right?
You know, Tommy had mentioned something about our ball club in 1960, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. What was different about our ball club? Yeah, I think we had talent there. I mean, obviously we did. Look at where the people have gone and what they did since and everything else. And then, you think about the fact that what did we have that maybe some of the other teams didn't have? And then we had those personalities that blended together, and we had a cohesiveness that kind of worked, and we covered each other, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. Nobody complained about somebody else. There are no solo performances in football.
That's right.
None. Everything that I ever did or Tommy ever did successfully was dependent on somebody else doing their job successfully. Otherwise, it would have collapsed.
Like everything successful in life, really.
But having said all that, you got to have the talent. If you ask every coach that's ever been fired in the National Football League if you can win without talent, and see what he has to say. Right. So, there was talent on that ball club, and you have to have that. And if you've got that, and then you have the intangibles, then you got something that can't be beat.
There was great talent, underrated talent on that team, and I think it's taken years and years to come out. We have a Hall of Famer sitting right next to me over here. We have a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame, Pete Retzlaff.
We're going to get him in, too.
Yeah, we'll get him in somehow.
Get number 44 in there.
They've got to.
I'd like to say, everybody, right into the Pro Football Hall of Fame to Canton, Ohio, and send them a letter that Pete Retzlaff deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. The address is 2121 George Hallis Drive, Northwest, Canton, Ohio. It also starts out with his number, which proves that he should be there, 44780.
Must have some significance, Pete.
Tommy, we don't have much. We only got a half hour, Tommy.
Just one address. That's it.
Pete won't brag on himself, but I'll brag for him. Let me tell you that.
No, Pete won't brag on himself, and I think that was a characteristic of that team. I talked to in writing this book on the 60 championship team. I talked to every member of the team, and the thing that really struck me was that when I spoke to the members of the team, the first thing they talked about, I wanted to talk about the 1960 season. That's what I wanted to talk about. And as soon as I would talk to them, they'd say, well, who have you spoken to? And I'd say, well, I
there you
talked to Pete and I talked to Tommy McDonald. How are they doing? And it would take me an hour to get by the news on everybody. And that's really, you guys had a camaraderie. And I've talked to a lot of sport figures for a long time. And it was really unusual and really struck me to have that kind of camaraderie on that team.
One of the interesting things in your book that I enjoyed was on the segment on me, and I'm sure with Tommy too, what really meant the most to me was not just a rehashing of the figures and the yards per carry and the number of catches and stuff, but the comments that your teammates from 40 years ago would make about you and say about you. And I tell you, you'd read that and you'd just say,
give you
wow,
goosebumps.
This is fantastic. To have friendships that last that long, that mean that much to you 40 years later.
Friendships and admiration.
Yeah.
I just found admiration. You had 40 years of other people coming into your lives and 40 years of other situations where you were 20-year-old kids. Tommy, you were 25. You were a young guy at that point. You've gone a long way since then. But to hear you talk about the power of Van Brocklin's leadership, for instance, to use one example, is really striking after 40 years.
We like to be around one another. We were sort of like family, really. Because look at that Monday, we would always meet over there at that restaurant over there, over by the Walnut Park Plaza. Walnut Park Plaza Hotel, and they'd want to go. If you didn't show up, you'd be disappointed. And not only that, after the games, a lot of guys would go and have dinner together after games. We got together and would have get the wives and everything like that together, and you don't have that today. You will not see the players go out and have that today.
Tommy, there are a lot of things they don't have today, I think, that we had, but they've got a few things that we never had. One of them's money. Obviously. You know, and people sometimes ask us, and I'm sure Tommy gets the same question, what the differences are. Well, there are a lot of similarities, but after you put 11 men on each side of the football, they kind of diminish then. I don't know how a coach can build a championship today when the front office is concerned about the salary cap, and the coach has to worry about free agency, you know, and all these things that have come up and come in since.
Really complicated.
And,
the chemistry.
And to some extent, the owners have changed the rules so that they now can use their hands when they're blocking. And I'll be honest with you, if you watch closely, you could call holding on almost every play of the game.
Yeah.
It becomes a dance contest instead of an execution of the fundamental skills. Right. And so those are things, I guess, that maybe that's nostalgia on my part, but by the same token, you know, you say, gee, wouldn't it be nice if Tommy and I could run our pass patterns with the same freedom that they give receivers today? Don't touch us after 5 yards.
5 yards, right.
Wow.
Right.
So you'd go downfield sometimes 12 or 15 yards, and defensive back and throw a crossbody block on you and take you out of the picture completely. That was legal.
I couldn't tell you how many times guys tried to clothesline me going across the middle, you know, and especially Butkus, boy, that guy. He wasn't dirty, but he played just a little bit too
intensely.
Too tough.
Yeah,
the two guys that would do that most of the time were Butkus and Joe Schmidt of Detroit.
Yeah.
Joe Schmidt's a forgotten name, but a tough guy, Joe Schmidt.
They were experts at, if you came across the middle and you weren't looking,
right,
you were going to end up.
Cleveland had a lot of good Fisk. Remember him? They had a lot of good linebackers too.
Who's the greatest? I mean, aside from number 25 and number 44 with the Eagles.
You're Philadelphia.
Yeah, I wanted to get the Eagles in there. Who's the greatest receivers that played in your day?
In our day?
Yeah, who did you most admire?
Well, somebody that had only half of Tommy's speed, Raymond Berry. Baltimore Colts. Had one leg that was shorter than the other.
Yeah, I know.
Had wore glasses that were so thick you could light a fire with them if the sun was shining, you know, properly. And so with all those handicaps, he was one of the best receivers. He could run pass patterns like you couldn't believe. And he and Johnny Unitas just, you know, clicked with that sort of thing.
Another one that comes to my mind is Sonny Randall.
I was going to say Sonny Randall.
Sonny Randall had speed. And if they would have thrown to him, that guy, because I know he scored 16 touchdowns one year. Right. That's pretty darn good.
Right. That was a 60, wasn't it?
There's some interest.
Yeah, you had 13 in 60, and he was just ahead of you. You had a great year, but he had more.
Interesting story about Sonny Randall. He's responsible in a way for the nickel defense that everybody talks about and uses today. Right. Because
and the Eagles are the ones who
we started it.
That, yeah.
We started it by putting 5 defensive backs in, and one of the guys was responsible for Sonny Randall almost all the time.
Right.
And all the other coaches would call Jerry Williams, who was the defensive coach at that time, and say, now, how did you do that? What was the strategy behind it? And, of course, they would share information, and that became known as the nickel defense.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
Another
correct.
one that comes to mind to me is Frank Clark of the Dallas Cowboys.
Teammate of yours.
This guy had a 20-point something per catch. And if he could have gotten thrown to an awful lot, that he should have been a Hall of Famer also. Harold Jackson,
Yes.
right off the top of my head, also was
Great
a great
years
little
with the
receiver, but he
Eagles,
didn't
and-
get thrown to.
No.
He had
Yeah,
great
yeah.
speed too.
Paul Warfield's another one, didn't get thrown to it in
He
two
only-
cities.
But he did get into the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
He caught 427 passes and he scored 85 touchdowns.
Tommy's got the whole thing. Pete, if you have any questions on your
got a
career,
number.
Tommy
I'll
will answer
I'll
them.
take him with me. But
Your new press agent, say.
there was John Facenda, who used to do the voiceover for NFL Films for many years, in addition to being a Channel 10
Right.
broadcaster. Had a line about Harold Jackson, and I can't give it to you the way he would because I don't have the voice that John does, but he would say something about how he would disappear off the line of the scrimmage, and as the ball was floating through the air, he would appear like a phantom just in time to rendezvous with the ball.
Oh,
And when you hear John say that, he said, somebody wrote a line that is just great.
that's
And
great.
that's what Harold would do. That's the way he was.
That's terrific.
Another guy's Del Schaffner. I think Del Schaffner should be
He
in
hurt
there
the Eagles
also.
a lot, didn't
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
with New York?
Yeah, he did. He was a good receiver also.
Always wondered how he got open by about 15 yards.
Another guy's Max McGee. Max McGee should
Max
be in
is
there
good,
also
yeah.
because.
Yeah.
But if you don't get on a team that is a throwing team, then that's why I left the Cowboys, and that's why I wanted to get away from some other teams because you got to be on a team that throws the ball a lot.
Right.
And Max McGee, they run the football because they had Jimmy Taylor and Paul Hornung. So. And that's one of the reasons that everybody keeps talking about how great Jerry Rice is. If Paul Warfield could have gotten thrown to like Jerry Rice has, there's no telling what kind of numbers Paul Warfield could have put up because he was, I count him as probably the greatest receiver that ever was because he only caught 427 balls. He scored 85 touchdowns. And he was on a running team with Cleveland and he was on a running team with the Miami Dolphins who had Zonka and Kick,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if he could have gotten thrown
Absolutely.
to 120
and he was on
times,
the Browns with Jimmy Brown and
Jimmy Brown and
Bobby Mitchell in the backfield at that point.
in the backfield. Exactly.
Some of the great players. Hey, Tommy, I have to share a story.
And the other one I want to say is I felt bad for Bobby Walston because Bobby Walston, that poor guy, he didn't get thrown to an awful lot either.
Bobby Walston, I think I call him the Forgotten Eagle in the in my book because Bobby Walston is an all-time great with that franchise. You never hear his name mentioned.
And you know what? No matter what Bobby would have gotten into, this guy really had a caring thing for people.
Yes.
He always got involved in no matter what there was on the team or anything like that.
Yes.
And like I say, we have 7 guys off of that 1960 team that have passed away.
Right.
The coaching staff is all gone except Nick Skorich. He's the only one that is alive.
Tommy, I have to get into the current team, but I'm going to preface it with a little story that I've already shared this with you, but it's with Freddie Mitchell, the current receiver with the Eagles. Freddie's a nice young man, and I spent some time with him down at his show at the Engine 46.
He has a show every week?
He has a show every week on Monday on WXTU.
Pete, how come you didn't have a show? How come I didn't have a show?
Tommy, you did. You had Jurgensen and McDonald.
Well, that was a TV.
First one that I remember.
This is radio, right?
Yeah, this is radio.
Yeah.
So he saw the book, and he's looking at the book, and he was interested in the Eagle history. And I turned to that chapter. I said, now, this is the guy you want to chase as a wide receiver. This is the guy this is Tommy McDonald. He says, I know Tommy McDonald. I know that name. I said, everybody here knows that name.
He probably is thinking of Ronald McDonald.
He wasn't. He had your photo, and I made sure he knew. In some circles.
The only thing, I don't have orange hair. See, I don't sell hamburgers.
Well, you wore that orange helmet one year. But
Yeah.
I said to him that, Freddie, this is the guy. I said, everybody in Philadelphia knows him. And he says, oh, I bet the people in here don't know him. I said, yes, they do. And so Freddie took the book, he went around, and he started to ask people in the restaurant.
He went in the audience?
He went in the audience, and he said, who's Tommy McDonald? And everybody says, he's a wide receiver for the Eagles. And then he said, well, what number is he? 25. Nobody said that was Pete Retzlaff's number, by the way. But he said, number 25. And he said, well, what was he? He said, he's a great receiver for the Eagles. And he asked about 5 or 10 people. They all knew. And I said, if we'll put that in perspective right now, in the year 2042, 41 years from now,
right?
If somebody goes around and said, who's Freddie Mitchell?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Will everybody say, well, everybody knows who that is.
Everybody knows who he is.
So that's what you want to do. You want to get that good and that famous. And that's the type of reputation that you have to forge, and that's what you can do in this city. So with that having been said, that's a great tribute to you guys and the power of this team that you have and the big names that you all still hold in this area, the Retzlaff, Bednarik, and Brookie, and you.
Well, it's just like when we came in the radio station here today, the guy remembered Pete Retzlaff.
Yes. Yes.
We talked to him.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
So what do you see about the current team? What do you like about the current group of Eagles?
I think there's talent there. I'm not sure which team's going to show up from Sunday to Sunday.
They're young.
I think there's a lack of maturity, and that's really not a knock against the team because I don't mean it that way. It just means that they're not quite as seasoned as they could be to really pull that talent all together and put it in one direction so they can become a dominant team. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you have to be. I don't see any team right now in their conference that they can't beat and win their division. It's just Dallas is not doing anything. Arizona always seems to have problems perennially. I think that the Giants are not as strong as New York writers would like us to believe they are, and the Redskins just about exploded, and imploded, I should say, when they got all the guys with all the money. So, and they do have some team, but, getting back to the wide receiver, Freddie Mitchell, I hope he will remember what I said, I think, in the last half hour, maybe the first part of this one, that there are no solo performances in football. All of your success is going to depend on the successful execution of the fundamental plays of 10 other people.
Guys. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I think Freddie has that has that firmly in grasp. I think he's a pretty
he's got a lot of
sharp young guy, very talented, pretty sharp young guy, and I think he probably gets enticed into saying things that are not heartfelt by the media sometimes, and you know what that's about.
That could be.
So, what do you think? What do you think, Tommy, about the current team?
I like him. I like him from day one. When McNabb was drafted and everybody else wanted Ricky Williams, I said from day one, I want the quarterback. I said because that's where it starts. That's the name of the game.
Because he throws the football to the receivers.
That's exactly right. Because you take any successful coach. They've had an outstanding quarterback. Holmgren up at Green Bay, when he left there and went to the Seahawks, he's become a mediocre coach because he doesn't have Brett Favre. Parcells, no matter where Bill Parcells goes, he's a successful leader, and he needs the good quarterback.
Gets himself a quarterback.
Right, and it's just like with here. Buck Shaw, he was a type of coach that didn't really say too much. He'd tell us when we were supposed to catch the airplane, what time the buses were going to come. But you know what? He had Van Brocklin.
Yes. And Jurgensen.
And Jurgensen as a backup. And John Elway. Look at John Elway. No matter, Denver Broncos, who's the coach there, they're going to be a successful coach because of John Elway. So as I said, from day one, I liked McNabb.
So if it all starts with the quarterback, the 1960 Eagles had 2 Hall of Famers at that position.
Yeah,
yes.
one playing and one sitting on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately
one learning.
Played, one learning. But Tommy makes a good point, I think. And it was, we only had 12 teams, and that was back at a time when every team had 2 good quarterbacks. Now you've got 32 teams in the league, or soon to have, and you're not that deep in quarterbacks. As a matter of fact, the quarterbacks that would probably be like Favre or Elway or somebody like that, I don't think you could get past 10 or 12 of those guys. And all the rest of the teams are going to have somebody that they would like to replace.
Right, and that essentially defines the contenders, doesn't it, Pete?
Well, it
I mean, the
does.
contenders are the ones with the quarterback.
Absolutely, and they've got to stay healthy as
Right.
well, because your team takes a different turn if your top quarterback goes down.
You take New York. They had Wyatt Tittle and Chuck Connolly.
Yes. That's
two
right.
two good. Whoever the backup is, would have been a starter on any other team or
They
anything
had that
like
George
that.
Shaw in '60 with Connolly. He was in with Connolly, was out.
And even just Tom Landry. Everybody thought he was a great coach, but he had Roger Staubach
And Morton.
and also Don Meredith. Don Meredith was a good little quarterback.
Well, and they had that Craig Morton controversy, if you recall, when Roger first got in the league. They had those two alternating, essentially. Yeah.
Right.
The owners might not like to hear me say this in the NFL, but the talent pool has been diluted down considerably because, you don't have 12 teams with 400 ball players in the league anymore. You have all these other teams, and you've got almost over 1,700 ball players. Now, chances are that when we played, Tommy, there were guys that could have played, but there wasn't room for them.
Right.
But not for 1,300 of them.
No.
See? And so when you see missed tackles, when you see drop passes, sometimes you cringe because that might not have happened back then. Well, if it did, you were going to be on the bench, quite frankly.
Or trade it. Wasn't that
and-
Buck Shaw's policy?
and if
One
you-
team coming, one going.
That's right. And if you got hurt, and the guy that replaced you that next weekend, if he had a good game, guess what? You were number 2, and he was number 1.
It was a different era. Did you get paid for preseason games here? That was a big issue then,
I don't
wasn't
think we
it?
did we?
For
Preseason games?
Preseason games, we got $50.
$50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some teams didn't get paid.
That was when I first started. We didn't get
Toothpaste
paid.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
57, we didn't get money. Then 58, we didn't get money. But I think we started getting in 59. We got $50 for preseason games. And that was only because of Pete Retzlaff and Van Brocklin and some of those guys, because they helped start the Players Association.
Yes.
Pete had a very big hand in that also.
I don't think the modern players could believe. I wish we had some time to get into that. Things like not getting paid for preseason games and other things.
Pete was our representative, and also you were also president of the Players Association at one time.
Yeah, for 2 years.
Right.
That was before it was a paying position.
So the Players Association owes everything to guys like Pete Retzlaff and those guys that helped start this, Wyatt Tittle and a few of those guys, because they got there. In fact, Gene Upshaw he makes $1 million a year, his salary.
Yeah, I know. But it makes me sick when I think of it. But, interestingly, Van Brocklin sort of blamed his activity in the Players Association, or the startup of it, on leaving the Rams and coming to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Players elected me player representative, Dutch came up to me and he said, "Let me give you a little bit of advice." I said, "Sure. What is it?" He said, "When you go to these conventions of all the player reps," he said, "sit in the back room, never raise your hand, and keep your mouth shut." I said, "Well, obviously I didn't, but I probably should have, because, in other words, keep a low profile, otherwise you might be traded somewhere."
Be in the Hall of Fame today too.
But we got to get him in the Hall of Fame. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, there were some scars, I think, from those early years, Pete. Being honest with your involvement in that. That I think it hurt your chances in the Hall
I
of
don't
Fame.
know. Well, maybe not. I don't know about that. I do know that the last team to come in was the Chicago Bears, and I had been told if the Bears don't come in after we're all paying our dues, then we're all going to drop out. So it was either the Bears came into the Players Association, or the whole association fell apart. So I called George Hallis, asked him if I could come out and talk to the Bears, because my arm was in a cast. I couldn't play.
That photo
and
is
to his credit, he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll save some time before we practice, and you can talk to the club." And it was really a great experience for me, because not only when they voted to come in, and the vote was 21-19, I believe.
Yes.
Very close. Why, George Halas said, well, why don't you stay tonight and we'll have dinner together and you tell your side of the story to the media and I'll tell my side of the story to the media. He was very gracious. And I've always respected him for that. You know, even though other people thought, like Mike Ditka says, he throws nickels around like manhole covers. So, you know.
Well, that's why Ditka left. He left the Bears and came to the Philadelphia Eagles
He was here,
because he got a higher salary.
Well, I really want to thank you, Tommy. I want to thank you, Pete, for coming in and sharing your thoughts on all these things. There's a lot of other ground that we could cover.
Oh yes, well, just put my check in the mail.
I'll send that out to George Halas Drive.
Yeah,
There you go.
Thanks an awful lot for joining us here. I appreciate it, and thanks for all those great years you gave to Philadelphia.
Well, I want to just say thank you for being a fan, because you really are a fan, I want to compliment you on your book, of 1960 Philadelphia book that you just wrote. So if anybody's interested in it, why? It really gives an inside.
I would assume they're in bookstores now, aren't they?
They're in bookstores. That's Barnes & Noble, and it's on the web. And
I want to compliment you. You did
Thanks,
really did a nice job. You really did. And you sort of like got to the inside of it, because a lot of people see from the outside, but not from the inside.
Well, I appreciate that. It was a pleasure talking to all you guys and getting that inside scoop. So I really enjoyed it, and thanks again, and have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. Fly, Eagles, fly, score a touchdown, 1, 2, 3. Hit 'em low, hit 'em high, and watch our Eagles fly. Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles!
Thank you for listening to Philadelphia Forum. If you have a topic of interest to the Philadelphia region that you'd like to see featured on the show, give us a call at 610-664-6780. Or you can write to us at Philadelphia Forum, WNWR, 200 Monument Road, Suite 6, Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, 19004. Join us again next week for another thought-provoking edition of Philadelphia Forum.